I've got a whole table of people who want to read through it before we give you any big breaking headlines. So, Chuck, just talk to me about the complexity here. Go broad lines as Lisa and Andrew read through this.
I will buy them some time because
thank you very much.
Because they are smarter than me and ought to be reading it and discussing it first with you. But the complexities, right? So you had laid it out nicely at the beginning, Katie. The various scenarios: full immunity, no immunity, or something in between where a president gets immunity for official acts.
Top line takeaway, not fully immune. Okay, sorry, right. Chuck, for interrupting.
Right. So to that point, that a president is not fully immune, the hard part, the complexity, Katie, is what is an official act and who gets to decide it. That it will be, sort of the devil in the details of this opinion.
So absolute immunity for official acts, not absolute immunity for non-official acts. You know that we're getting into breaking news because the background behind us has turned red.
Yeah. So this is 6-3. The three liberal justices are in dissent. Sotomayor filed a dissenting opinion in which Kagan and Jackson joined. Jackson filed a dissenting opinion. It's not an absolute win for Donald Trump because it does say
the conservatives versus the liberals.
Yes, and there's a line in here about it is true that personal acts are not immune, official acts it can be immune, and that there's a presumption that is listed here. He's entitled to at least presumptive immunity from prosecution for his official acts.
So there's some wiggle room there.
There's wiggle room, but you can understand why there's a dissent because the idea of a presumption is one where that has never existed. It's clear that is not in the Constitution.
That's what Jackson was arguing, which is like if you give them a presumption of immunity, it allows them to maybe go farther than they would knowing that the law does hang over their head, just like everybody else in this country.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I have to still read is, like, how do you rebut that presumption? The stronger the presumption, the more it's actual immunity.
Neil, I want to bring you in on this as well.
So as I'm reading it, and obviously it's very complicated, and we've just seen this in the last couple of minutes, but it is a 6-3 decision that does side with President Trump on a variety of things. So, for example, much of the indictment that Jack Smith has is about Trump pressuring the Justice Department officials in various ways. The court says that was part of Donald Trump's official duties as president, and that he is immune for that. Another part of the indictment is about Trump and what he did with the vice president with respect to the false certification of electors and stopping the January 6th certification. With that, the court says, the majority says, that's a difficult issue. They remand it back. That means give it back to the district court to decide whether or not the presumption of immunity has been overcome by what Jack Smith has been able to adduce about this not being an official act. And then there's a third bucket of allegations in the indictment, which are about whether Trump pressured state officials and private parties and members of the general public to engage in his scheme on January 6th. And with respect to that, the court, again, sends that back to the trial court for an evaluation of whether that overcomes the presumption of official immunity and whether those acts are official or not. So if I'm reading, and again, there may be caveats because I'm reading this pretty quickly, it means that the district court is going to have the hearing that Andrew has mentioned about an evidentiary hearing to decide some of these questions. That can take place before the election, but it does make it virtually impossible for a trial to begin.
But it does, giving the, trying to see the silver lining here, it does give the American public a chance to hear some of the evidence that Jack Smith has compiled beyond the indictment. At least you're giving me a face.
Yes and no, and here's why. This may be the most damaging part to Jack Smith of the whole syllabus that I'm reading right now. And Katie, again, I'm not too far into the opinion, but one of the parts of the holding today is that in analyzing whether or not the conduct that is alleged in the indictment is official and therefore immune from prosecution or personal, the district court has to exclude testimony or private records of the president or his advisors that probe his
State of mind?
No. Without official conduct. In other words, anything that they have that touches on official conduct from an evidentiary perspective also has to be excluded. That was one of the concerns of Jack Smith and his team in their reply brief to this court.
Wait, is it excluded from the evidentiary hearing or excluded from evidence that they can present at trial? Because as I understand it, you can use speech, which is protected by free speech in this country. You can use speech as evidence in a trial against somebody.
Well,
so you can use things that are protected as part of the buildup for why there is wrongdoing.
Maybe that's the case with respect to this mini trial that we have all been discussing this morning. But at trial itself, testimony or private records of the president or his advisors that probe official conduct that otherwise would be immune from prosecution may not be admitted as evidence at trial.
Let's bring in Yamiche Alcindor. Yamiche, you have some more top lines for us as well.
Well, this is, as you said, a really historic day here. This is the Supreme Court setting a brand new standard for presidential immunity. And they're saying here, as we've been talking about, that he is entitled, presidents, to of absolute immunity here for official acts. Now, some of those official acts include contacts with the Department of Justice, contacts with the vice president. We know in the case of former President Trump, he's alleged to it, and we know that he did this in some cases, that he was pressuring his vice president to overturn the results of the 2020 election. He was also looking to possibly install someone at the DOJ who would then overturn or seek to overturn the results of the 2020 election. And today, the Supreme Court is saying that those are official acts and likely are going to be immune. Now, there is going to be, as you said, this sort of mini trial to decide what are official acts or what are not official acts. But as I'm reading through this decision and thinking through this decision, there were a number of times where people said things like, well, what if he takes a bribery, the president, for appointing an ambassador? What if he takes a bribery and tries to bribe someone to kill someone who is an opponent, a political opponent? It sounds that what the Supreme Court is saying is that when it comes to constitutional acts like appointing ambassadors, that those are official acts that would be immune. Possibly, though, when he's acting as a private citizen, when he's acting as a candidate, those other acts might not be immune here. I think it's important to also point out here that not all acts here are immune. They're setting this standard, but also there's going to have to be a real conversation about what sort of acts are official and what aren't. I also want to point out that when you think about what former President Trump was saying here, this is a big win for him. Essentially, he was saying that the things that he was doing to try to probe the government, essentially to get him to win the 2020 election, when in fact he had lost, that those things should be immune. And it sounds as though today the Supreme Court is taking his side in a big way, and this really does complicate, not imperil, but complicate the special counsel's trial here, the special counsel's push to get a trial here, and the special counsel's push to try to get him to be criminally prosecuted for some of the acts where he tried to push for the 2020 election to be overturned.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.